Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. About a year ago, I put a video out about credit terms that people should know. Basically like a 101 type deal where, you can learn some terms to get into the credit card game. You're going to be watching a bunch of us talking heads talk about credit cards, how much we love them. We're going to be using acronyms and terms that you may or may not be familiar with. Now, needless to say, it did terribly. Barely anybody watched it, and I've actually seen new creators come into the space and more people flood into the space still using some of the same terms incorrectly. So we're going to try this again, and we're going to do it with a volume 2. Now, here is the original video right here for your viewing pleasure, but before we get into volume 2 of credit terms you should know, you got to hear from my co-star. Take it away, sweetheart.
Welcome back to my dad's channel. If you're new here, make sure to click that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to share.
Now, we're not going to do any fuss, any muss. Let's get right into the first term. The first it's actually an acronym, but I'll give you the full term as well, and that is ACH, and that stands for Automated Clearinghouse. Now, you will hear the term ACH. You will see it commonly. Let's associate it with one of our favorite credit cards, and that's the Bilt card. Bilt card uses ACH in order to pay people's rent. That way they can cut checks, because ACH is an electronic method by which financial institutions use to transfer money to one another. Normally they are low values, they're not huge sums of money. That's how come normally your personal checks and things of that nature tend to go through an ACH system. Financial institutions also use them to transfer money back and forth to one another. They're not on huge terms, but that makes it very easy for Bilt to use an ACH system in order to issue checks for people's rents from a credit card as they are backed by a bank. The next term, AutoPay. Yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. Automatic payment. Set it and forget it. Most issuers, most people who want money from you in order to create a more convenient life will allow you to set up automatic payments where they will draft and or charge a particular card, be it credit, or charge a set amount every month on the same day, period. They will even charge on holidays because it's all automated. Computers do not need a day off. Now, we have card year. Now, think of a card year as opposed to a calendar year as a year, but this year, this particular year, starts from the approval of a credit card. So if you apply for a card on Valentine's Day, your card year starts February 14th of whatever year, ends February 13th of the next year, because the next Valentine's Day would start the new year. That is what a card year is. So the reason this is important is because sometimes there are benefits and credits that are associated with credit cards. Some roll on a calendar year, January 1st to December 31st, and others roll on a card year from the date of your approval, not your application. That part is important because in some cases, if your application has been reviewed and or needed supplemental information in some cases by some issuers, your approval date may or may not be backdated to your application date. And if it is not, your approval date will be vastly different from the day that you applied. Now, another term you may or may not hear is cash equivalents. Now, the reason I'm bringing this term up is for cards like the Robinhood card and other cards that deem cash equivalents as things that are not a part of eligible spend for certain conditions. For instance, it has been found that with American Express, if you pay your taxes in order to meet subs, in some cases, because it's quote unquote a cash equivalent, it doesn't really code and count towards your sub. With the Robinhood card, you cannot pay taxes. They do not allow for it, as it is a cash equivalent. Now, a cash equivalent is pretty much defined as financial instruments with a maturity of 90 days or less. The next term we have is catch-all. Now, a catch-all is normally a reference to a credit card that you have that is used for all non-category spend. In other words, if they apply to the gold card, a catch-all would not be the 4 for groceries or the 4X for restaurants. It would be that 1X for all other spend. So what you want to do is grab a card, called a catch-all that has more than one X for all spend that does not fall into a specific category. For instance, you go to the liquor store. Liquor stores normally don't code as anything unless they're located inside grocery stores, but that's a whole different story. But like standalone liquor stores normally don't have a merchant code that is advertised as something that people want to run out and spend on. So you would use a catch-all card in order to get more than one X at a liquor store. Gun stores, another thing. Those are just to give you an example of what you would use a catch-all for. Chargeback. A chargeback is when you have a charge on your credit card or your charge card that you then want returned. Think of it as basically a refund for credit cards or a refund for charge cards. This is one of the reasons you will find that it is kind of hard to buy a vehicle on a credit card because dealers are afraid of what are called chargebacks. Now, chargebacks can be triggered by a few things. Maybe you charged and when it hit the issuer, you didn't have enough money to accommodate it on your limit. In some cases, it can be triggered by a fraud claim, be it authentic or not so authentic, people trying to game the system. But these are the kind of things that can trigger a chargeback for a merchant. So once you have used your credit instrument, be a credit card, charge card, or what have you, a chargeback is basically a fancy way to say a refund directly to that card. So in some cases, if you've returned something, they will ask you, hey, would you like a gift card? Or would you like it put back on the card that you used to buy said item? The reason they do that is because that is a chargeback, which is actually different from a cash refund because they have not received the cash yet, and you have interchange fees mixed and mingled in that, so that is a chargeback. And sticking with the idea of charging, next term is a charge card. A charge card, like my Amex Platinum, my Amex Gold, my Amex Green. I do believe back in the day the diners clubs were charge cards as well. Charge cards are cards that do not have a hard and fast limit and are due at the end of your billing cycle. Now, whether your billing cycle is 30, 60, or 90 days, you must pay the entire balance. Charge cards are not meant to hold a balance in a revolving fashion like a credit card is. That's not how they're set up. They're basically like a net 30 or a net 60 business account, akin to something of that nature. So basically that's what a charge card is. You use it, you run up the bill, and you must pay the entire bill at the end of your billing cycle. That part is extremely important. Next up, we have a corporate term, but it's one that you hear a lot. Credit. And it's not credit in the way that you think. Like I said, it is a corporate term. All credit means is that money is going out, that it's outgoing money, period. Me as a business, me as a corporation, when I pay for things, I don't pay a vendor, I credit a vendor. That's all it is, just that simple. Credit means outgoing money. Now, credit card is our next term, and that is what your favorite issuers send out, like Chase and Capital One, Discover, Citi, and even Amex. They too have credit cards. Now, those differ from charge cards as they have hard set limits that you cannot go over, or even if you do, be it by accident and they decide to pay it, they are going to hit you with fees and charges for exceeding said credit limit. You can carry a revolving balance over under the condition that you agree to pay fees at a set rate. Actually, my mistake, it's not even set because the interest rates on credit cards tend to swing violently depending on how the economy is going. And they will list that, and they'll tell you that you'll pay anywhere from 15 all the way up to 30%. So if that is a rabbit hole you choose to go down, that is your business, but that is a credit card. Now, another term you may hear is daily driver. Now, a daily driver in the credit card space is essentially what it sounds like. It's the one that you use every day. It's the card that you get your coffee with every morning. It's the card that you go to lunch with. It's the card that you may charge for pizza night. It is a card that never leaves your wallet and or purse because this is one that you are going to use every day, no matter what, period. Hence the name, a daily driver. It's just like people with multiple cars who have a, garage queen and a daily driver. So just think about it that way. It is a card that you are always going to use, the exact opposite of a sock drawer card. Now, once again, I have another corporate term, but you guys hear it a lot. And that next term is the opposite of credit, which is debit. Now, a lot of people mistakenly, they use it in a personal sense where a debit card means that, things are going out, and that's not the case. From a corporate standpoint, a debit is incoming money. So I am not, as a business, paid by YouTube. I debit X amount of dollars on a YouTube check to my account. If I would pay them, I would credit them, but I am debiting money from them because that is money incoming. That is money coming to me. That's all debit means, is incoming money. For our next term, we have devaluation. Now, you might have heard this a lot lately, especially considering with Qatar and a lot of the travel partners devaluing their currency. But all devaluation is, in the credit card points and miles world, is another word for inflation. In other words, meaning for the same goods and services and reward spaces that you have, a devaluation is when an issuer or a travel partner requires more points or more miles for the same exact service that previously cost less, thereby making the inherent value of their currency worth less. That is a devaluation. Now, there are different types of devaluation. They could charge you more for services, or even transfer rates can cause a devaluation. In other words, if you can trade one Amex point for two Hilton points, and then all of a sudden it goes from one Amex point to 4 Hilton points have been devalued. Now, if it's flipped, where you start with one Amex point for 2 Hilton points, and then it turns on its ear, now you need 2 Amex points for 1 Hilton point. Now, Amex points have been devalued. That's just a quick example. Next term you want to be on the lookout for is dynamic pricing. Now, you may or may not have heard this. As a matter of fact, JP Knowledge just did a great video on Hyatt globalist status and the Hyatt program. I actually just watched it today. As a matter of fact, if I can find it, I will link it here. If not, you'll literally see my finger just pointing at air. But the thing with dynamic pricing is when an issuer adjusts their points requirement for goods and services based on demand, also based on their perception of what that demand may be, whether it is real or not. And what they will do is actually drive up the cost of specific goods and services. And this normally happens more so at hotels. They're notorious for it than any other services, even though it happens across the board. But they will drive up the points cost on certain nights when they think there's more demand, because they'd rather the cash than the transferable currencies. So that is what dynamic pricing is. It is literally pricing based on a firm's perception of demand, be it realized or manufactured. Going into the E's, we have reached the word ecosystem. You hear this bantied about a lot. Chase ecosystem versus the MX ecosystem versus the Citi ecosystem. They are not all created equal, but basically all an ecosystem is, if you have not caught the context clues, is a platform that an issuer runs for customers to transact business with them, be it with our regular fiat money, or be it with transferable currencies or cash back in the form of points that you earn with said issuer. That's all an ecosystem is. Normally encapsulated in that would be your bank accounts, your ACH payments, remember that from earlier, and your transfers of their currencies to other partnered company currencies as well, like when you trade for your travel partners or if you send them out to your brokerage accounts. Next up, we have eligible spend. Now, most people tend not to pay attention to this because they don't pay attention to something very important, which are the terms and conditions of the cards that they get. I call them T's and C's. But what eligible spend is the products and merchants with whom you can spend your money and for whom you can spend on their items that are pursuant to the terms and conditions that you sign up for when you apply for a card. Now, I made the example before that American Express is kind of funny with taxes all of a sudden, especially where their sign-up bonuses are concerned. You have to read your terms and conditions. I failed to read the T's and C's on my Robinhood card, and I tried to pay my taxes with them, and cash equivalents are not eligible spend for the card. They can dictate what you get to spend the money that they are going to loan you on. Like, I am sure there is not a single American-based card issuer that would make eligible spend anything associated with terrorism and or expressed crimes. So that is what you need to look out for: eligible spend. Remember, a lot of these card companies will tell you all your multipliers and tell you what you have to spend in eligible purchases. If you don't believe me, go check their websites. Another term you will hear, this is another acronym, and it's FICO. Now, everybody's familiar with their FICO score, FICO this, FICO that, FICO 8, FICO 10. Well, what does FICO stand for? FICO is actually an acronym for the Fair and Isaacs Company. They are a credit monitoring, well, not a monitor, they're a financial services company, to be honest with you, and that's what it stands for. That is what FICO stands for, and it is the most popular set of credit scores that are used to determine people's credit worthiness. Now, they are not the only game in town, but FICO so far is the standard by which we are pretty much all measured. Now, another acronym you'll normally hear is FNA, and FNA stands for Free Night Award. One of the most popular free night awards is the free night award that you will receive with the Amex Aspire card, but also there are other cards that give you free night awards, aka free night certificates, award certificates, so on and so forth. Marriott cards will give those to you, like I have the Marriott Bonvoy business card that I get a free night award every single year on card anniversary. The Chase Hyatt card, personal, not business, will grant you a free night award every year on your card anniversary. That's all an FNA is. So if you hear somebody blasting through an explanation about a wild and crazy redemption they got and they mention the letters FNA, that's what they mean. Now, another thing, and this is more of a technical term, you will hear it in our community a lot, is incognito mode or incognito browser. And what that is that when you are surfing the net, when you are looking for your record high subs, when you are trying once again to, find that diamond in the rough and maybe you can get an elevated sapphire preferred sub, you want to use what's called incognito mode. That is when you set your browser to a private browsing mode. That's what it's called on Apple, and Chrome and not Internet Explorer, I think it's called Edge or whatever now, or an Explorer. It's incognito mode. What it does is it leaves no trace of where you are visiting. It sets up a private browsing session that is separate from your computer. So with that, companies cannot then use your IP address, or at least they should not be able to use your then IP address in order to log your visit and thereby tweak their prices and or offers based on you visiting their site, because they will do things like that in an attempt to get you to buy, and it will not be at your best condition. Obviously they want you to buy, but they want to make as much money off of you as possible. Next up, here's a term that I put out there. You're not going to hear it a lot, but it's just something that you need to know, and it's internal controls. Now, internal controls are things that credit card issuers have that aren't exactly laws that they have to follow. One of the most unpopular and popular internal controls that there are is the 524 rule. There's nothing that says Chase has to have that, but they have it anyway. And that rule, although it can be punitive to people who want to collect their cards and have a great handle on their credit, has actually, instead of, even with its punitive nature, has made Chase one of the most popular issuers, because the exclusivity and the manufactured scarcity of their cards makes people drool all over Chase regardless of the quality of their cards. And they're normally one of the slowest issuers to make any adjustments to their cards because the demand never seems to taper. But that's pretty much what an internal control is. Another example would be like the Amex 3 and 90. I believe it's 3 and 90. You can't get more than 3 credit cards approved for in 90 days. That's a thing. I got denied for a card because of that. So these are the kind of internal controls that they have. And I'll leave you with one last one. That's the Barclays Blacklist, which I am a member of. If you have had a less than positive interaction with Barclay in the past, they have a very long memory and they won't even run your credit report because they have no interest in doing business with you. That's their choice. That is yet another internal control. Now, another term you guys might be familiar with, I actually just got familiar with it, is min-max. Essentially, when you are in the credit card points and miles game, when you min-max, what you are trying to do is make your setup, your collection of cards, your system as efficient as possible while trimming off any inefficiencies whatsoever. In other words, you are trying to make your setup pretty much turn into God mode. So that is pretty much what min-maxing means in a contextual sense. Next up is a term, and this is something everyone should be familiar with, but I would be remiss if I didn't put it in here, is MR points. And those are membership reward points. That is American Express's proprietary transferable currency. That is what you're going to earn on some of their cards. Unless it is specifically stated that it's a cashback card, their cards earn MR points. That's how you will hear it referred to in the community. They're just membership reward points. Now, another term we have is multiplier. Now, this should be a gimme term, a gotcha term. Everybody should know this. But what a multiplier is a certain spending category that is outlined by a credit card issuer, like groceries or gas or what's another one? Travel or transit. Now, multipliers can be a little misleading as they can be both multiplicative and in some cases additive. So in other words, you can get a straight 4x, for instance, on groceries with the gold card. But you can get let's say you get a 5x on home improvement stores with your Freedom Flex, when in actuality, you're not getting 5x points. You're actually getting 1 point plus 4 additional for a limited time. And it gets even crazier once you start adding double bonuses that the Chase Freedom Flex is famous for. Next up, we have NLL. Now, you're not going to hear this a lot, so I'll just give you the whole the whole thing unabbreviated, and that's no lifetime language. No lifetime language is specific to American Express, as you will hear people look for these sorts of applications. With American Express, once you have held a card, any card, you are no longer eligible for the sign-up bonus, and obviously people want multiple sign-up bonuses. That is another reason for Chase's popularity. But if you can find an offer with no lifetime language, you can essentially skirt that rule while not actually breaking any rules because they put it out there. So it is a way to game the Amex system in a very legal sense based on the tools that they themselves have given you. So a no lifetime language offer will allow you to pick up another Amex card that you have already had without being penalized by the lifetime language, thereby being able to get yet another sub. Now, another term you may hear is overlap. Overlap it's a tricky demon, but basically what it means is that you will have cards in a setup like, for instance, the Chase Trifecta. You have the Chase Freedom Unlimited, you have the Chase Freedom Flex, and you can pick and choose, be it the Sapphire or the Reserve. That is the common traditional Chase Trifecta. Now in that, the Chase Freedom Unlimited has a 3X dining category. The Chase Freedom Flex has a 3X dining category. And the Chase Sapphire Preferred has a 3X dining category. And the Chase Sapphire Reserve has a 3X dining category. So there is crazy overlap where dining is concerned. The whole point of getting multiple cards is to have all of your spending covered, but overlap is when multiple cards are doing the same work, thereby really making them a little less useful. Now we're getting into dangerous territory here with this term, and it is called retroactive interest. Now, the reason you don't hear about this a lot is because everyone in the community claims that they don't pay any interest because they never carry a balance, because everybody's stuff works out perfectly every single time, when in actuality it doesn't. But the fact is that retroactive interest can be charged, especially with charge cards. My Amex people, hear me out, especially those of you in the beginning of your Amex journey. If you do not pay the entire balance of your charge cards and you do not have pay over time instituted, they can charge you retroactive interest back to the date of purchase. This is something that they can do. You will pay interest on top of interest. It is not something that you want to test out with Amex whatsoever. It's already hard enough to calculate the regular interest that they charge, but with retro interest, it just gets wild and the numbers start skyrocketing. So basically, retroactive interest is interest that can be backdated to a date of the issuer's choosing in order to penalize you for the convenience of borrowing their money and the crime of not paying it back on time. Next term we have is stacking. Stacking is a common thing where you will use different platforms, in some cases different ecosystems and or buying programs in order to maximize the points earning from each purchase. Now, shout out to my guy Lonnie. He has a podcast with a couple other creators and friends, Matt Clausen, RJ, and Tariq, where they actually have a point stacking podcast. You can feel free to check that out. But basically, what this is all about is making sure that you get the most bang for your buck. Now, as an example, you can use an Amex Green Card to book a Marriott room, and you will earn Amex MR points plus Marriott points. But if you turn on Rakuten at the same time, as a matter of fact, I'll use the American Airlines portal. Let's say the American Airlines portal has a multiplier on that of 2% or 2x miles for every dollar spent. You will then earn MR points plus Marriott points plus American Airlines points. That's just an example of a stack. There are much more common stacks out there, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how it works. Next up, status. You will hear status mentioned a lot. Status is basically an achievement given by a loyalty program based on spend and use of products. And normally status is denoted by precious metals such as gold, platinum, and or minerals like diamond and what have you. So the more you spend, the more you use a product, the more you move up in status, and you get even further benefit from said program. You get freebies thrown in there, free upgrades and what have you. That is what status is. Now, you can't talk status without status match. Now, status matching is when companies have loyalty programs that they will use a certain attained status in order for you to get free status at another firm without having to pay for or buy their products. So you can match status from one to the other. One of my favorites is I'm currently a Marriott Titanium Elite member. Now, because of that, I can match my status to United Airlines and get Silver United Airlines status. And I haven't flown a United flight in forever, but now I have status with them, which puts me ahead of the line for upgrades and sweet benefits above other United flyers who may or may not have status. Now, this next term might sound a little funny, but trust me, we need to cover this. Supermarket. Why would I need to define a supermarket? Well, because you have people with the gold card and other cards that have grocery multipliers and online grocery multipliers. And I don't think they understand what a supermarket is, because people will use the gold card and other flat out grocery multipliers in places like Target, Super Target, or Walmart Supercenters, which are not grocery stores. Now, your Walmart neighborhood market is a grocery store. Aldi is a grocery store. Supercenters are not. They're not. I don't care if they sell groceries. Costco, not a grocery store. BJ's, not a grocery store. Sam's Club, not a grocery store. What a grocery store or a supermarket, be it, is defined as is something that sells, their main product of sale is food, nothing else. That is their main product of sale. And two, make sure that you are in an actual supermarket, aka grocery store. Most grocery stores, they have either or they have a combination of pharmacy and a bakery. If you have those three components in a place that mainly sells food, nothing else, no tires, no shirts, no kids' toys, and this and that, whatever, mainly food and nothing else, I'm 99% positive it will code as a grocery, because 99% of the time, those are coded as grocery and or supermarkets. The more you know. Next up, we have UR points. Now, I told you about MR points. These are UR points, and these are Chase's proprietary transferable currency. UR points stands for Ultimate Reward Points. That is what you will earn with Chase cards. Even the ones that are cash back, they have a uniform structure. Non-co-branded Chase cards all earn UR points. And If you have a UR point earning card and you do not have a card that gives you access to transfer partners, then by default, those UR points can then be converted to cash and it will then be a cashback card. That is how UR points work, and that is what UR points stand for. Now for the crowning jewel and our last term for this video, and that is utilization. Utilization is what you will hear about because basically all utilization is, you can measure it by card or across all the cards in your account, is how much are your balances that you are holding as of right now compared to the amount you are allowed to charge. So if you had a $100 balance on a $1,000 credit limit, you have a 10% utilization. That's it. $10 balance on $1,000, you have a 1% utilization, and so on and so forth. Like I said, you can do this across all your cards. This is one of the largest determining factors of your FICO credit score that we talked about earlier, but that is it. That's utilization. So I hope these terms have been useful to you. I tried to do it before. Hopefully this one will, track a little bit better. And once again, I did link the first video so that way you can look at those terms as well. I hope they are all useful for you. If you have any others that you want to drop in, please drop them in the comments. And this video is probably going to be a little long with all the terms that I put in. But with that, I'm going to do my pointy thing here because I am roasting. And I want to thank you, as always, for coming through to the channel. You guys take it easy.